The big move that the Golden State Warriors ended up making to try and put one more contending team around Steph is to go out and get Jimmy Butler. Now, this is a pretty big gamble for Golden State because in order to get Jimmy, they had to give up Kyle Anderson, Andrew Wiggins, Lindy Waters, Dennis Schroeder, and draft compensation. Now, despite everything that they had to give up to get Jimmy Butler, this team starts to make much more sense from a construction perspective when you put a player like Jimmy Butler next to Steph Curry. And if you think about it, they really didn't have much of a choice because they're either A, weren't that many options available as far as upgrades go, or the options that they did want to pursue didn't actually want to come to them. It sounds like they wanted a reunion with Kevin Durant, but Durant said that he had no interest in reuniting with the Warriors. So Jimmy Butler was a logical step if they wanted to both upgrade the roster, give Steph Curry that second star, and also keep a lot of their primary assets on the roster. The Warriors are currently the 10th seed in the West at the time of this recording, currently sitting at 27 and 26, and that's only 2.5 games back from the 6th seed, and there is less than half the season left. If they didn't make a move like this, they would have just ended up punting another season where Steph is still capable of producing at an all-star caliber level. The big thing with this trade is they didn't have to give up a ton of their young talent. They still have Moses Moody, they still have Jonathan Kuminga, they still have Trace Jackson Davis, they still have Brandon Pajemski, and even though this isn't a perfect roster by any means, when you have Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler, anything's possible. And based on everything that's been said throughout this season so far, it sounds like the Warriors front office is very committed to this two timeline sort of approach to building out the team. Yes, they want to get Steph as much help as they can to give him a shot at a title run, but they don't want to do it at the detriment to their future success, their ability to develop and acquire young talent. And it sounds like they're not interested in mortgaging their future to try and win now, especially in such a competitive Western Conference. And I do think that the Jimmy Butler trade strikes somewhat of a balance to where, yes, you gave up a lot to get him, but you didn't give up everything. You didn't give up all your guys on rookie contracts. You didn't give up all of your future draft capital. And this was a very fine and difficult balance that the Warriors had to walk with this trade. But the big question that I think is on a lot of people's minds is, what can Jimmy Butler still do? Because he is 35 years old. He hasn't played more than 65 games in a season since 2017. He's going to be making $54 million next year and $58 million the year after that. Next season, Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry will take up $113 million of cap space. That's 73.5% of the salary cap between only two players. So while the Warriors are still in pretty good shape, that's a ton of money to have tied up in two players and certainly limits the amount of moves that you can make on the fringes. So the Warriors still need Jimmy Butler to produce at a star caliber level, probably being the second option to Steph most nights, but occasionally being that first option, that takeover guy that we've seen him be capable of being in the postseason when he's taken the Miami Heat to the finals. But given how he's performed this season, should we be worried that he's not capable of playing at that level anymore? This season hasn't been the best for Jimmy just from a points per game standpoint, but I do think a big part of this is Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo becoming more of central focus points for the Miami Heat, taking on more of a scoring burden and running a lot of the offense through them. Jimmy kind of seemed to take a back seat, whether that was by design or a personal decision by him. It's anyone's guess, but he's still a highly impactful offensive player. Impact metrics still have him grading out with some of the highest offensive impact of his career. His efficiency is the second highest it's ever been in terms of true shooting percentage. And make no mistake, Jimmy Butler absolutely can still score the basketball at a very high level. He had a 25-point game and a 20-point game in his first two games as a Warrior. So it's clear some of this passiveness that we saw from him this season in Miami was a byproduct of some of the other circumstances that were going on there. It wasn't a lack of ability on his part. And that three-point percentage is ticking up, even though the volume is still pretty low and not exactly at a point that I think it's going to be making defenses treat him like a shooter. It's still good that he's knocking down 36% of his threes this year. The driving from Jimmy Butler is definitely still there, which I think is really, really important in terms of the Warriors being able to leverage his gravity, force extra defensive attention, force that nail help, force help off the strong side. And that's going to create some easy open kickouts. It's going to get the defense in rotation and make some of the offense easier for everybody else. This is going to be specific specifically useful in the non-Steph Curry minutes where they don't have as many options to generate offense. They'll be able to just put the ball in Jimmy Butler's hands and let him do his thing, whether that's driving and collapsing the defense or finding the right man in off-ball actions. And you can still get the benefits of all of that when he is sharing the floor with Steph. The Warriors have actually already been doing some really cool stuff with him in the half court with Steph Curry. They have him operate as the screener in the pick and roll. And of course, on a ball screen like this so high up, the Bucks are going to send 2 defenders to make sure Steph can't get an open 3. So Jimmy's going to slip into space in the middle and get the pass. And with Jimmy drawing the attention of the defense, this is going to allow Draymond Green to sneak behind the defense for an easy finish. They've been leveraging him as a high post passer, having him come up here to get the pass. And Quentin Post is going to run behind the defense into the paint. And with most of the defense honed in on Jimmy Butler, he's just going to make the easy feed for the finish. Jimmy's also still one of the best foul drawers in the entire league. He makes defenses have to play him differently. On any given night, he's probably going to have the opposing team's second or third best defender on him. And so he can hopefully get some of those guys in foul trouble. And the biggest thing with this trade to me is Steph hasn't really had a great shot creating second option for a pretty long time at this point. Defenses have been able to hone in pretty heavily on Steph at any given time, and that just makes his life infinitely more difficult. It makes all of the offense infinitely more difficult. So having Jimmy Butler now is going to take some of that defensive attention off of Steph. And if teams decide that, hey, we're still going to put as much defensive attention on Steph as possible, that's okay, because Jimmy Butler is still capable of putting the ball in the basket, getting to the free throw line, and generating offense at a high level. It's not just about his scoring. It's the fact that he can also be just an overall offensive facilitator, distributing the ball, running pick and rolls, hitting the open man, connective passing. This is all stuff that he is still very much capable of doing. Now, one thing that's interesting about Jimmy Butler this season is his usage rate was 20.4% prior to the trade, which was in the 39th percentile. This is one of the lowest usage rates of Jimmy Butler's entire career. I think that's probably going to see a pretty significant uptick as they try to free up Steph a little bit by nature of having Jimmy next to him. And so while his scoring production doesn't necessarily look super impressive right now, just from a points per game standpoint, I think that's going to tick up once he's being more aggressive and more involved and is in a, quite frankly, more competitive environment. For all of the struggles that the Warriors have had on the offensive side of the ball this season, they've still been a top 10 defense, currently sitting at 10th in the NBA in defensive rating at the time of this recording. And when we're talking about Jimmy Butler, that's where things get a little bit tricky. I think Jimmy Butler is still a very good defender when he's engaged, but it's no secret that Jimmy Butler does kind of tend to coast at times during the regular season. And I think this year especially, there's been a little bit of a lack of engagement. Now, I think the drama with the Heat's front office could maybe potentially explain some of that lackluster defense. He had less motivation, he was less interested, but also Jimmy Butler's 35 years old. So defensively, I'm sure some of this is just the byproduct of him starting to get up there in age a little bit. But all of that is to say, he has all the institutional knowledge of years and years of being an all NBA level defender. He can still turn it on when he's engaged, and hopefully he gets his joy back, and that results in some improved defense from him. But ultimately, I think you look at this move and you look at where Jimmy Butler is at in his career, and this is really probably his last chance to win a championship. He's made the finals twice in his career, yet he hasn't won a ring. Obviously, those Heat teams, by traditional standards, weren't necessarily as good as what we see from championship caliber rosters. But to me, this is Jimmy Butler's best chance. If he's going to win a championship in his career, this is his best shot, because he's not going to have to be the guy who goes out there and does a carry job to drag his team either to the finals or through the finals. He's got Steph Curry, who again is going to benefit from Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's going to benefit from Steph. And considering what the options were for him at this stage in his career, this is probably going to be his best shot. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to subscribe and leave a like if you're new. Regardless, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.